A New Mexico priest answers a call to help a dying man.
But it was an evil trap. The priest was murdered. Now, cold case detectives have reopened that long unsolved case, and News 13 investigative reporter Larry Barker has discovered technology may provide crucial new evidence.
What a violent, hideous crime to ask a priest to come to do his ministry and then in that moment to take him and kill him. Evil thing, an evil thing.
People just flocked to him. He was kind, you know, and very pious.
It's a tragic story. He goes out to administer what he believes is last rites, and unfortunately it was something that cost him his life.
He had a long and distinguished career. Father Ronaldo Rivera served the Catholic faithful in New Mexico churches, large and small.
He was a much beloved pastor of the Cathedral Church, highly respected Franciscan priest with his own Hispanic roots here in New Mexico, much loved and much grieved.
At the age of 57, Father Rivera was murdered in Santa Fe. On a warm summer night nearly 3 decades ago, Father Rivera was at the wrong place at the wrong time. It was August 5th, 1982, about 8:30. He was in the Santa Fe Cathedral's rectory when the phone rang. A mysterious stranger said he was calling from a payphone and he desperately needed help from a priest.
Father Rivera was told that the caller's grandfather was requesting last rites be administered as he was sick and dying.
Agent Paul Chavez is a state police criminal investigator.
He told Father Rivera he was in a blue pickup truck, and Father Rivera had agreed to meet him at the rest area on top of La Bajada Hill.
Father Rivera rushed out of the cathedral at 9 o'clock that night. It was the last time he would be seen alive. 2 days later, the priest's body was discovered in a remote pasture 2 miles southwest of the La Bajada rest area. He was on his back, one arm extended. He'd been shot in the chest. Autopsy results suggested the priest had been bound and tied. Then Archbishop Robert Sanchez was devastated when he arrived at the crime scene. Meanwhile, city and state investigators combed the area for evidence.
There were some personal effects that were missing from Father Rivera's person, which consisted of his eyeglasses, his wallet, and a sacrament kit.
The father's 74 Chevy Malibu was found abandoned with an empty gas tank at a rest area near Grants. Crime lab investigators examined the vehicle for fingerprints. A man of God had been lured to his death, and no one knew why.
It's such a hideous thing that someone would do that. It's incomprehensible to call the cathedral in Santa Fe and to ask the priest to come and then kill him. That's the most outrageous, horrible thing.
Helen Rivera, the father's sister-in-law, remembers that sad day Santa Fe said farewell.
When he died, there was a procession on foot from the cathedral to the cemetery, Rosario Cemetery. The procession was a big procession. The streets were full, and the sidewalks were lined with people that stood there.
Investigators believe the murderer was someone with a grudge against the church. The man who called the cathedral that August night was carrying out a deadly plot to kill a priest. Father Rivera was likely not the target, but when he took that phone call, it became his death sentence. There were precious few clues to the killer's identity. Nearly 50 suspects were investigated. The case was even featured on the network TV show Unsolved Mysteries. But over time, the trail grew cold. Eventually, new leads simply dried up. However, despite the passage of time, Father Rivera has not been forgotten. Not by his family, his church, and not the police.
It wasn't an easy case 28 years ago, and it's certainly not an easy case today. This is a solvable case. It could be as simple as shaking the right tree.
Agent Chavez is now actively working this cold case. Decades-old evidence is being reevaluated. Scott Ford is the state police deputy chief in charge of investigations.
We have some evidence that we do possess that, due to technology advances, will be beneficial to this investigation, even possibly solving it. We would like to be able to solve this and bring some closure to Father Rivera's family to the Archdiocese.
Last year, the Archdiocese dedicated a new wing at the cathedral to the memory of the slain priest. And at the remote spot where Father Rivera was killed, there are no reminders of the horrible crime that occurred here 28 years ago. A simple cross used to mark the spot, but it's gone now. Today, this is just an old cow pasture. And over at State Police, Paul Chavez is poring over old evidence with a new perspective.
We're not giving up on this case.
There is still grieving in Santa Fe about his wonderful life and ministry and then his tragic murder.
Father Rivera's death was hardest on his family. For Helen Rivera, there are the pictures and the memories, so vivid despite the passage of time. Helen will never forget the day her daughter was born with a tragic disability. Ronaldo Rivera held the fragile infant in his arms.
And I remember just him holding her, looking at her. Didn't say much or anything. He just held her.
Larry Barker, KRQE News 13.
State police are tight-lipped about what that new evidence developed by technology is, but we have learned that it is significant enough to potentially crack this case.